Hello and welcome to ESPNFC Live, Friday's version. And that holding screen at the start gets more and more populated every single week. It's just nice not to have the biggest head in the room for once. That belongs to Craig Burley. Someone who's up there, though, with me is Gab Marcotti. We'll speak to him shortly. We've got Archie Rhind-Tutt over in Germany, a whole host of others. We've got Rob Dawson previewing the Premier League games. That's all still to come. And a preview of the Women's World Cup final. Looking forward to that one on Sunday, England against Spain. But we start with an ESPN FC exclusive. Lionel Messi sat down with our very own Luis Miguel Echegaray to chat into Miami and also some interesting little nuggets about his time with PSG.
Gracias, compañeros. Aquí estoy con el campeón mundial, el capitán de Inter Miami, Lionel Messi. Un placer. Leo, un placer. Gracias por estar con nosotros.
Hola, muchas gracias.
Primera pregunta, Leo. Te he visto ya desde la llegada y he visto todos tus partidos aquí con Inter Miami. Y sinceramente te veo feliz, tranquilo, disfrutando. ¿Me puede decir, esa sensación es, la que transmites, es realmente lo que te sucede internamente o es por eso, porque elegiste Inter Miami?
Sí, la verdad que sí, que venía en búsqueda de esto cuando tomamos la decisión con mi familia, ¿no? De poder disfrutar otra vez como lo había hecho durante toda mi carrera, después de haber tenido 2 años complicados. La verdad que la pasamos mal y bueno, por suerte hoy estamos en un lugar el cual estamos felices, no solo por el resultado y lo deportivo, sino en el día a día con mi mujer, mis hijos, la manera de vivir, de pasar el tiempo, y la verdad que estamos disfrutando muchísimo de este momento.
Interesting that, well, first of all, the full interview is available online with a QR code. If you scan that, you'll see the full interview. But Gab, it's very interesting. In that interview, he talks about Paris Saint-Germain and basically says he didn't want to go there. He was forced to go there and he was forced out of Barcelona. That was then, this is now. We'll speak about the present shortly. But the comments, if you scan the QR code and you'll see the full interview with Lionel Messi that he makes about PSG, me going to PSG was neither planned nor desired. I did not want to leave Barcelona. How fresh is this, or did we know this at the time when he spoke on his arrival in Paris?
Well, we've known it because he's referenced it several times. He had harsh words for the Barcelona president when effectively he said, well, Messi didn't stay, or we wanted him to work out a way for him to stay, but we couldn't afford it given the financial situation we're in. I think this is one aspect which to me, frankly, has never been clear. One of the two is telling porkers or is misinformed. Mm-hmm. Because, even just now, it's news of last week, Santi Cazorla coming back to Spain to play for Real Oviedo for the league minimum, right? So if it was one of those situations where, there was no way that Messi could take a massive pay cut and go back to play, then people would understand it. But evidently, if Cazorla, as a free agent, can go back to Barcelona and pay for close to nothing, go back to Oviedo in his case, because he loves the club, then I don't see why Messi couldn't be able to do it. And if Barcelona say, well, we can't afford Messi because he makes too much money, then I can understand it. But then you can't then say, well, I never wanted to leave. Well, yeah, I never wanted to leave, but then I had to because they couldn't pay me what I thought I was worth, which I think some people would understand, but isn't quite the same thing, to me at least.
Yeah, look, it's a really good interview, and I would urge you, if you want to scan the QR code, to see the interview in full. There's a lot of talk about Paris, but you know what? That's in the past. Right now, all everyone is talking about is Lionel Messi at Inter Miami. Simple question, Gab. Could it have gone any better for him in MLS so far?
Yeah, he could have scored 2 goals against the Union and maintained his average rather than just 1. No, I think it's been absolutely tremendous. He scored. It's not just the scoring goals; it's his presence on the pitch. The fact that Inter suddenly got better, because people make comparisons with Beckham, but what they forgot was the Galaxy were very bad under David Beckham. But here, the whole team has been lifted. Part of that maybe as well the arrival of Busquets and Jordi Alba as well. But Messi's been such a big part of that. We don't just want to see our superstars play well and give us highlights. We want to see our superstars make the teams around them, make the players around them better. And certainly that's happened, at least as far as the Leagues Cup is concerned. We'll see what happens later on when MLS picks up again.
Yeah, well, Inter Miami ain't going any lower, but it's how high they could go and who would put it past them getting into the playoffs and then potentially winning the whole thing. Because right now they've got the best player in the world, possibly the greatest of all time. But before that, they've got a final of the Leagues Cup to look forward to against Nashville. How on earth did Nashville stop Lionel Messi this weekend?
Certainly the momentum is there, but I think the way you stop Lionel Messi is, I think the blueprint is there, right? So you know that Messi at this stage of his career, he's not going to press. He's going to play the game at a certain pace. The other players are going to have to work harder. So what you do is you want to shield him in a way that he doesn't get the ball. You make the other players work harder so that maybe they're not going to be as fresh. Although I think, was it the third goal against the Union or one of the goals against the Union, where basically it was a complete decoy situation where they all keyed in on Messi and I forget who it was, went and scored. Now Tata Martino has that tool as well. But how do you stop him? You go out there and you play as a team. It's still 11v11, right?
Finally, before we go on to the Premier League, one more question about Messi and the impact that he's made, not just to Inter Miami and down in Florida, but for the league in general. I mean, I've had a couple of managers from the UK saying, by the way, any potential for openings up in MLS or even the USL just to get their foot in the door? What he has done for the league going forward, not just Inter Miami, as far as we already know, there's millions, if not billions, of pairs of eyes on Lionel Messi and what he's doing here. But going forward in the future, what could the legacy be after kind of Messi's gone, with people right now trying to get involved while he's still here?
That's a really good question. So the temptation, and I think the people who are bankrolling this, and remember it's corporate sponsors like Apple and Adidas heavily involved as well, is that this represents some sort of seminal turning points where the rights and the sponsorship are something to be really valuable, and the league's really going to, I don't mean take off, because I think the thing about MLS is if you look at the attendance figures on a city-by-city regional level, they're doing fine. They're doing really, really well. I think the average attendance is, 6th or 7th in the world, maybe even a little bit higher. That's not what Messi is there for. I think Messi is there to create a national conversation around MLS. And my view has been that one of the things which was necessary to guarantee MLS stability, but which also at the same time has held them back a little bit, is that this idea that you don't have the super clubs in MLS. You don't have, the way we have in European football, Real Madrid are playing, Bayern are playing, Manchester City are playing. Everybody has to watch. You don't have those. So you'll get high local ratings because people are passionate about their own team. The national games, not quite the same thing. That is, I think, what Messi can bring, because Messi's obviously must-watch TV. Can you create that mass where you have those super clubs? Because tell you what, those stars exist in other U.S. sports, right? The Dallas Cowboys are America's team for a reason, right? That, I think, is the sweet spot that MLS wants to get to.
Final reminder, by the way, just a word of warning. When scanning the QR code, make sure you get the QR code, not Gab's brain, because if you get Gab's brain, you've got a portal into everything that's in there, and that could take quite a long time to peruse. So, yeah, make sure you scan the QR code for Lionel Messi's interview with LME, which took place last night. We move on to the Premier League. We're delighted to bring in Rob Dawson. Rob will be at Manchester City against Newcastle tomorrow for us. But first of all, we're going to speak Spurs against Manchester United. That's slightly earlier than City. That's the lunchtime kickoff in the United States, the early evening in the United Kingdom. And Rob, after seeing what Manchester United did last week against Wolves and seeing what Spurs did, certainly going forward against Brentford, do you expect goals when Spurs face Man United in this one?
Yeah, the way that United defended against Wolves would suggest so. Tottenham last season and also in their first game of this season conceded goals. So you would like to think so. United versus Spurs historically tends to throw up a lot of goals, and I'm sure that neutrals watching will want to see that as well. I mean, from purely from United's point of view, it's quite a big fixture early in the season. They were very underwhelming against Wolves. I think people were expecting to lay down some kind of early season mark, and it didn't happen. The other side of this is also the United's away form. Even last season, when they made progress under Erik ten Hag, was absolutely woeful. I think the only team that finished in the top 10 that they beat away from home was Fulham, and they needed a last-minute winner to do that. So it's one of the criticisms of Erik ten Hag's United so far in his reign, that they just don't win these big games away from home. And so an early season trip to Spurs is a good opportunity to put that right.
Sure is. Gab, what did you see from Spurs under Ange Postecoglou that was maybe different from previous managers? And of course, without Harry Kane, what's the new look Spurs looking like so far from what you saw at Brentford?
So I made this point in my column on Monday that people are talking about, how will they replace Harry Kane? Can Richarlison replace Harry Kane? But there's been another tremendous change in Spurs, which is the formation. And effectively, what Ange has brought is he's replaced one of the center backs with James Maddison. So you've replaced a guy in your back three with an attacking midfielder who has scored double figures in the Premier League in the last 2 years. And I think, to me, that is the biggest change. You can't think of it in terms of who's going to replace, Harry Kane's 25 goals from open play. That's obviously hard to replace. But how is this team going to be different so that maybe you don't need a guy who scores 25 goals from open play plus 5 penalties the way Kane did last year? So I think that is what is most exciting. The fullbacks, my boy, obviously, Destiny Udogie. These are very attacking fullbacks, and they have license to attack. That puts a strain on the midfield. I think this is just going to be a much more attacking Spurs side, a side that wants to take the initiative. There's pros and cons to that, but hopefully it'll make for an exciting game from the neutral against the United side that, as Rob said, I would expect to be a little bit more cautious away from home the way they often are.
Well, Spurs are actively looking to replace Harry Kane. You are still not actively looking to replace that bloody squeaky chair. And I only referenced it because it made a noise. Come on, Gab.
Only you can hear the squeaky chair.
No, Rob Dawson. He's in
hear
Manchester.
It.
Rob, did you hear that squeaky chair?
I'm not getting involved. I'll let you two argue it out.
Tell you what, we'll argue. You talk about Harry Maguire. What's going on there? What's the latest? I know you've done a feature for ESPN FC about Harry.
Well, I mean, as of right now, he's staying put. All summer United have kind of left that decision up to Harry Maguire. There have been players that they've actively looked to get rid of this summer. Fred was one of them. There are players in another category, the likes of Harry Maguire, Scott McTominay, Anthony Marshall, who they weren't trying to push out of the club, but they said that they would consider bids for if they came in. Obviously, one came in for Harry Maguire from West Ham, around 30 million. United accepted that. Then it was down to Harry Maguire and West Ham, and Maguire decided that he didn't want to go there. He wants to stay. It feels to me like that's quite a big gamble on his part, because every piece of evidence so far under Erik ten Hag suggests that ten Hag doesn't trust Maguire at all. And when you don't trust a defender, you're not going to play. And when you don't play for your club, you're probably not going to play for England. Harry Maguire is still first choice for England, but Gareth Southgate has said it a couple of times now that situation can't go on indefinitely. So Harry Maguire really is gambling that he's going to get enough games for United this season to keep his place in the England squad ahead of the Euros next summer.
Now, you'll be at Manchester City against Newcastle for ESPN FC tomorrow. City minus Kevin De Bruyne. How different are they with and without the mercurial Belgian?
I mean, obviously, if you take a player of that quality out of any team, the team is going to suffer. The interesting thing about De Bruyne is that Pep and City, even last season, were beginning to come up with a plan to deal with not having him available. There were times in very, very tight games where Pep would take De Bruyne off after around 60, 65 minutes. And a couple of years ago, that would have been completely unthinkable. So it's not that you take De Bruyne out of that City team and they don't function at all. Obviously, it's a massive miss because of the number of assists that he generates. They have got players in there that can step up, the likes of Phil Foden. Foden is an interesting one in that much of his time at City he's played out wide. The speculation for a long time has been that his position ultimately will be inside in a high central midfield role, and maybe with Kevin De Bruyne out now, that you'll see Phil Foden playing that position more often than he has done in the last couple of years. So obviously a massive blow. It may be that City have to go into the transfer market to replace him simply from a numbers standpoint, that they need someone else to fill that gap. But I think Pep, the kind of manager he is, will back himself to come up with a plan to deal with that.
It's like you've seen the script. That was absolutely seamless in the transition to Gab Marcotti, talking about the transfer market, talking about Lucas Paquetá, someone you've seen play plenty times, and talking about him as a possible replacement for Kevin De Bruyne. Gab, what are you hearing about this one? And would he be a good addition to the way that City play?
I think he'd be a necessary addition to Manchester City first and foremost. And obviously, it looks like they're getting Jeremy Doku as well, who is a winger. And so maybe the thinking is Doku allows you to play Bernardo Silva inside, who's another option who can, maybe do some of the things that Kevin De Bruyne does. But the fact of the matter is they're short. And I'll tell you what, they were short last year too. It's just that, it worked out because people didn't get injured at the wrong times. But fundamentally, you have 6 players for your front 4 attacking positions. And, if one is out, no problem. In comes Foden, in comes Alvarez, whatever. If 2 are out, then you got to turn to Cole Palmer territory, right? And that's a problem. And then you don't have changes. And then if last year you played 61 games like you did last year, rather, then everybody's going to get tired. And, this thing with De Bruyne's hamstring, you can go and blame UEFA and FIFA and too many games and blah, 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 all he wants. The fact is the man is overworked. You know he's overworked. You know that he's injury prone at this stage of his career. So I think Paquetá fits the mold. The problem is West Ham know this as well. And that's why, if City value him in the 60 million range, West Ham feel entitled to say, hey, how about, 100 million? Because, it's a situation where the seller, gets to name the price to some degree. I mean, I think they are looking at other options as well. I think Pep has enough leverage where if he feels he needs Paquetá, I think he can get them to push the boat out a little bit. You know what? Maybe Manchester United want City to get Paquetá as well, because then that way West Ham will have a little bit more money and maybe they can make it a little bit sweeter to take Harry Maguire away.
I was looking, Rob, at Newcastle's last 2 or 3 games at Newcastle, a couple of 2-0s and a 5-0 as well. This is a different Newcastle now, though, isn't it? And after scoring 5 against Villa, what are you expecting is their game plan in this one? Because City can be got at. It's how you keep the door shut at the other end is the problem.
Yeah, but though Newcastle showed last season that they were masters at that. I think they had one of the best defensive records in the league. So if there's a team who are going to stop City scoring, it's probably them. I mean, obviously that's easier said than done when you've got, to face players like Erling Haaland, who just seems to get better and better. I mean, what I would say about Newcastle is that they look now at home at this level, playing these massive games, even away from home. And I've sat in Pep Guardiola's press conference today, and sometimes he's asked about other teams, and he kind of dodges it a little bit today. He was particularly effusive about it. You couldn't have spoken any more highly of the job Eddie Howe's done and what Newcastle have done last season and are also trying to achieve this year. So I expect that they'll go to the Etihad looking to defend as well as they have done last season. They've got players who are fantastic going forward. Alexander Isak last week was fantastic. His goals against Villa were unbelievable. So they will fancy their chances. They are, as Pep Guardiola said today, they are a Champions League team, and he expects them to turn up at the Etihad and play like one.
Enjoy the game tomorrow, Manchester City versus Newcastle. Gab, how many games are you going to watch this weekend, or are you at a game this weekend?
I do not yet have my list for this weekend. Believe it or not. Okay. But I would assume, it'll be the usual 12 to 14 games.
As I say,
somebody's got to do it, right? We all get paid to watch sports, okay?
It's not a job; it's a hobby.
Exactly. My great grandfather was a farmer. He worked the fields. I don't know what your grandparents did. Yours was probably a doctor, Rob. But I'm assuming yours was very, very blue collar, Dawson. So
one was a miner, one was a head teacher.
There you go. Who has the easier life? We cannot complain ever.
No, we cannot, even if it means
He's got
getting
a
up
point.
early to watch games. He has got a point, Gab. Thank you. Enjoy your weekend. Get that chair oiled. Rob, safe travels, and you can read Rob's stuff at ESPNFC.com. Now we head to Germany now. It's the opening weekend of the Bundesliga. Delighted to say that Archie Rhind-Tutt joins us. Werder Bremen against Bayern Munich coming up later today. Archie, before all that, before we preview that, we are going to play a clip of an interview you did earlier this week with Harry Kane. Before we see that, first of all, welcome in. And secondly, what was it like and what was Harry like interviewing him with a Bayern training shirt on?
Thank you, Mark. Good to join you. It was a bit surreal because I have to say, I never expected this move. I thought that he was playing all along and eventually he might turn up in the Premier League. So I was pleasantly surprised, but after just seeing him his whole career in a Tottenham shirt, it still felt something not quite right. But I think it's great for Bayern Munich and for the Bundesliga as a spectacle to have him around, to have that sort of star attraction. And yeah, I found him very friendly and also somebody who is very much looking to get down to business and prove a point to the people who have said, why have you come to the Bundesliga?
Do you think he's now over missing a penalty against Hearts on his Spurs debut 12 years ago? Big question.
I think he's getting there. You know, I don't think anything can really remove the true pain of missing a penalty against Hearts. But look, I think he's the things he's achieved in his career on a goal scoring level is incredible for any striker, and let alone to have done what he has with the English national team and the sort of responsibility that he's taken on. I think that is something which isn't to be underestimated at all.
Yeah, without a doubt. Now you can see the full interview with Harry Kane and Archie Rhind-Tutt via the QR code. Just scan that. But here's a little taster of when Archie met Harry.
There's been talk of, well, he's come here for trophies. I mean, you've always been there for trophies, I guess. But is that a big part of the motivation here?
No, I don't think so. People talk a lot about trophies, and there's a lot about social media and about trophies. But for me, it's to always improve. Of course, I want to win. I want to win every year. When I was at Tottenham, I've never gone into a season not trying to win the trophies. So, of course, we know it hasn't quite happened for me yet, but I've got plenty of years to try and achieve that. So it's not, like I keep saying, it's not just the trophies, it's to push myself, to be at a club like Bayern Munich. The pressure is a lot higher and you have to make sure you are winning titles. You have to make sure you are getting far in the Champions League, otherwise you failed. And that's an experience I wanted to feel, that's a pressure I wanted to feel, and that's ultimately why I've come. What's the biggest challenge you think that you're facing here? Maybe the German language? Probably the German. I mean, I'll try as much as I can to learn, but it's an extremely difficult language for sure. But it's hard to say. A lot of people talk English here, which will help me anyway. But I'll try and fit in culturally as much as I can. I'll try and learn the language. I'll try and get to know the fans as much as possible. But I think in all this, ultimately, the bottom line, people want me to play well. The Bayern Munich fans want me to perform on the pitch. So if I'm not talking German, but I'm still scoring goals, I'm sure they won't be too disappointed. But like I said, I'm open to trying to experience as much as I can.
Before we even get into Harry Kane, what are you doing wearing a 1990s Kaiserslautern goalkeeping jersey?
I'm a big fan of 90s goalkeeping kits, Mark. That's one of the first things you should know about me. I've got an Aston Villa goalkeeping coaster at home, actually. So I was just glad I was able to translate it into a shirt in the first place.
That was a rascal of a shirt, and thankfully Harry wasn't blinded by that. I just love his approach. It's just like, you know what? You get one chance at life, and I wanted to try something a little bit different. It doesn't change what's happening with England. It gives him a chance to win trophies. People say he could have waited a year and had his pick of clubs, but you know what? He just fancied a change. I admire that.
Exactly, and I think it's underestimated as well just how big a club Bayern Munich are on a global scale. I think in England, if you don't go to Real Madrid or Barcelona when you're going abroad, or maybe to Italy as well, then people raise an eyebrow and thinking, well, why would you do that? But there is life beyond the Premier League in all corners of the world. And the Bundesliga and playing for Bayern Munich, that's going to put him under a certain pressure that he's not been used to at Tottenham. Every week, he is going to have to hit the mark. And if he doesn't, there will be column inches filled with it, plenty about him. And I think that the certain pressure that he's been put under by Thomas Tuchel as well, in terms of, well, he's expected to make a difference here. I think that that's something that he's going to have to live up to. Mm-hmm. What he's had to cope with at international level, I think, has prepared him to an extent. And the fact that he doesn't know the language yet will also keep him out of the politics of the club, which are really cooking up right now. But it's something different, as you say. And how he adapts, I think he will learn from it, whether it's a positive or negative experience. He will grow as a result of it.
You're at the Weserstadion for Werder Bremen against Bayern Munich. Does he start today?
I would be very surprised. I will put on Lederhosen myself if he doesn't start today, which is something I don't think you want to see, Mark, judging by your expression. He is going to be the centerpiece of this Bayern team. The question is he a shiny Band-Aid for all of Bayern's problems right now? You look at Joshua Kimmich in the number 6, the defensive midfield position, who has said that I am a number 6. And Thomas Tuchel has said, no, you're not. I want a new defensive midfielder. And it doesn't look like he's going to get one. The fact that Manuel Neuer is still out injured, and he was expected to be back for the start of the season. And then you've got players like Leon Goretzka, who has been used to being a regular starter at Bayern and is being frozen out by Thomas Tuchel. And you wonder what will all of these pieces, when they come together, along with the fact that Thomas Tuchel needs to be a bit more of a diplomat if he's going to manage the situation. And in Germany, he is definitely regarded as something towards the opposite of that. It's all cooking up. And as a Werder Bremen fan said to me today, look, we might not have the best chance of beating them, but there's a good chance that they might beat themselves.
Fair. Yeah, they could. I'm just glad you're not with Don Hutchison. Otherwise, he would have mentioned that goal he scored for Scotland against Germany all these years ago. So at least that is a bonus. By the way, Kane obviously is the replacement, albeit a couple of years after Lewandowski left, or a year after Lewandowski left. Robert Lewandowski got 35 Bundesliga goals in 34 games in his final season with Bayern. Are you going over or under for Harry Kane in his first season in the Bundesliga with Bayern?
Under.
Okay.
I think that people underestimate quite how good an achievement that was from Robert Lewandowski to do that. Easy for me to say. I think that when you look at the fact that the season before that, in Corona times, he scored 40 goals as well. And that was a record that people thought would stand for eternity from the legendary Gerd Müller. And I think that there's this assumption that, well, Harry Kane scored lots of goals in the Premier League, therefore he'll do it here. It's a different equation. He might need some time to get going as well, just to really get used to what's going on at Bayern. I think he'll be helped a little bit mentally by the fact that he's been finishing on a regular basis, and that's something that this side has struggled to do recently. But overall, there are 4 less games in a season than there are in the Premier League for a start. So no guarantee that he's able to score that many goals, but I'm still backing him to go at least over 20.
Okay, just under a couple of hours until kickoff. I want to chat with you about the rest of the Bundesliga shortly, but if you want to watch this game this afternoon, there are the details. Coverage beginning in just under an hour on ESPN Plus, a full hour's build-up before Werder Bremen take on Bayern Munich. And also on Saturday, we've got a big one with Borussia Dortmund taking on FC Köln. That one is on ABC in the United States and on ESPN Plus. Pre-game coverage half an hour beforehand, noon Eastern. That starts 9 a.m. out west with kickoff at 12:30 Eastern, 9:30 out on the West Coast. Okay, Archie, Borussia Dortmund, so near, but yet so far last year. How do they feel going into this one? Is there even more determination, or is this a wound that's going to take some time to heal?
There are happy faces and determined looks, I would say, in Dortmund. But I think we're going to find out just quite how deep that it did cut, particularly with no Jude Bellingham this season. Even if there have been noises this week in the German media that actually Bellingham would sometimes disturb the dressing room by the way that he would go on these laps of honor on his own after home games, and that's not what you do in Germany. But the fact is they're going to miss his quality and the drive that he gives, and actually the way that he would whip up the crowd in a way that German players and Bundesliga players don't do that much. And that sort of instinctiveness of recognizing the moment, I think any team would be worse off without him. You look at the signings they have made, they've definitely made a big upgrade at left back with Rami Bensebaini coming in there from Borussia Mönchengladbach. Marcel Sabitzer, the fact that he's arrived from Bayern Munich, a central midfielder who was previously at RB Leipzig, that's a sign for me that Bayern are looking at Dortmund's squad and go, you know what, we still don't fear you. If you're able to get a guy who was third or fourth choice central midfielder at Bayern Munich the past few seasons from your main title rival, then I think that's a statement from Bayern. And Sabitzer is a class player and somebody who can make a difference. So I think that's an interesting situation to watch. But as you say, mentally, which has always been a big question about Dortmund recently, in recent years, they've had leveled against them. Mm-hmm. I think that we have seen teams in Germany respond after epic collapses. I think of Bayern Munich after their 2012 disaster, 3 second-place finishes, a relative disaster for most clubs, I would say. And that can spur you on. And I think that Edin Terzic is a very emotional character. I think that he's got an excellent tactical acumen to him as well. And I still expect them to finish in the Champions League places. I'm just not quite sure about the title.
Okay. Let's wrap this up with one to watch, with a surprise package. Now, Darmstadt are back, so there's that rivalry with Eintracht Frankfurt, back in the top flight. Heidenheim, what's their glass ceiling? Is it simply, look, if we get safe, then we're happy, or can they even aim for potential top half or maybe even a European spot? Who's your one to watch? Who's your surprise packet this year?
Lots of people are tipping Heidenheim to stay up, and that would be an amazing story.
Yeah,
because they've got Frank Schmidt as their coach, who has been there for over a decade and has been there for the rise from the lower leagues of German football, and that would be really something amazing if they are able to stay up. Borussia Mönchengladbach are a team where people aren't expecting a lot from them because they've lost Jonas Hoffmann, Marcus Thuram, their captain Lars Stindl, and everybody's gone out the door. But I look at some of their pre-season form and some of their new signings, Chvanchara, as I believe he's called, and Frank Honorat as well, who've come in. And I think that there could be actually a fresh wave coming from them, and seeing them actually, because people aren't expecting much of them, that those lower expectations might help them to do something this year. Because everybody is still expecting something from Union Berlin, Freiburg, even Eintracht Frankfurt as well. Those names are in the mix. Bayer Leverkusen are being tipped for the title by some people, such as the impact that Xabi Alonso made there last season. So I think to go out of the circle a bit, I have to say Gladbach.
Okay, enjoy the game today. Thank you for that, Archie. Look forward to catching up with you. Not catching you, not this size. I ain't running fast. We'll catch up with you and your Rascal shirts throughout the season here at ESPN FC Live. Thank you to Archie. Now, we end the show with a little bit of a preview of the Women's World Cup final on Sunday. But who will win it? Will it be Spain? Will it be England? And one of the talking points ahead of this one is to do with Lauren James, whose two-match ban has now expired. She is available for the final, arguably England's best player. But should she start? And things got a little bit heated this week on the Gab and Jules podcast, and Julien Laurent has a rather interesting take about Lauren James. Let's hear what he had to say.
I think there's a big call to make. Obviously, Lauren James will be available again after her suspension, which when I was doing the show with Nadim, who was obviously backing Nigeria. This is, and when we saw the Lauren James thing, everything was ready to say it's a David Beckham moment. For those who didn't see this, She goes and she deliberately kind of steps on an opponent's back. You're not going to get away with that in the age of VAR. She's apologized. She got her automatic one-match ban and another ban. Ella Toone played in her place. I don't think she was necessarily exceptional in the match I saw. Lauren James gives you more.
Yeah.
Do you think there's going to be a change?
I don't think there should be. I think Ella Toone has to start the final, bring on Lauren James as a super sub if needs be. Let's not forget Ella Toone scored in the World Cup semi-final, in the Euros final, of course, against Germany, a very important goal. And I think I told you that when I did the show, when I just came on a little bit for the show with Nadem, I think you should punish Lauren James anyway. And for me, starting her in a World Cup final where her teammates, and I know this is a team and you're all together, but they got there without her because she was not good in the last 16 against Nigeria and got that red card that could have got her team out. Then the quarterfinal, semi-final, she wasn't there in arguably the two toughest games that England have had to play in Colombia and then Australia. Why change it? Don't bring her back into the team. Put her on the bench. If you need her, then bring her up. Bring her on for the last 20, 25 if you're a goal down or if it's 0-0 or whatever. But I think Ella Toone deserves to start the final.
Point from Jules. The other thing from a Spanish perspective, Alexia Putellas and the fitness issues. Do they start her or do they bring her off the bench? England against Spain, the World Cup final. On Sunday morning, full reaction will be live. I'll be live right here on ESPN FC with reactions straight after the final whistle. So good luck to both England and Spain in that one. A full weekend to come. And a reminder, it all kicks off on ESPN Plus at 1:30 this afternoon. Our coverage begins of the pre-game show Werder Bremen against Bayern Munich with kickoff an hour later Eastern time at 2:30. Harry Kane likely to start at the Weserstadion in his full debut for Bayern Munich after coming on as a sub last week. Wherever you're going this weekend to watch the football or whatever you're watching on television or listening to on radio, enjoy it. The Bundesliga's back. The Premier League continues. There's all sorts of action this weekend, including La Liga and plenty of games there. I'll be on the call for Barcelona against Cadiz on Sunday. Enjoy the rest of your footballing weekend, boys and girls. We'll do all this again soon. Bye for now.